Are you ready to join me in transforming fear to freedom? That's the objective of the show. Are you ready to explore with me and my guests? Are you ready to get into the deep and play? This is where it's at, and that's what it's all about. No medical advice here. Use discernment and decide for yourself if the information is right for you. All views and opinions expressed on this show belong to the individual and are not necessarily shared with the producer of the show. Want more details? Go to letsgetrealchattingwithcatherine.com. Now let's get real and have some fun. Who are we going to explore with today? Come on with me and let's get into the deep.
It's 2015. Season 8 on Let's Get Real, Chatting with Catherine. I'm the host, the producer, Catherine Whalen-Costin, and I am thrilled to be bringing you a new season with new insights, new wisdom, amazing guests, inspiring people doing amazing things. You know, there are so many people who are kind of overwhelmed with what seems to be a negative influence on the world, and I realize that that's going on. I'm not being naive, but I also realize there's an awful lot of good going on in the world, and that's my focus, is to really help people to find new ways of living on the planet so we can thrive. Let go of this idea of that barely surviving is going to do it. I mean, we're not getting out of this alive, right? I mean, there's only one way off the planet. So while we're here, my commitment is to bring you the best that I can find to share what they know, people that have been doing their work, doing their research or their personal experience, using their gifts, inventing things, new insights, new discoveries, and bringing them to you. So it's going to be a fun season, and today is no different.
Today we're going to be talking to Dr. William Tiller, keynote speaker at the International Kinesiology Conference 2015 being held in Banff, Alberta, Canada. He has been featured in the movie What the Bleep Do We Know, and many of you will recognize him from there. Dr. Tiller is a professor emeritus in the Department of Materials Science and Engineering at Stanford University, and is the author of 4 groundbreaking books on psychoenergetic science. Science and Human Transformation, Subtle Energies, Intentionality, and Consciousness is but one. And you can check out his full bio on www.lgrcc.com. He has published numerous papers, both Orthodox science and on non-traditional websites. Papers are on his website, so you can check into that if you're interested. If you've got the science mind or you just want to know exactly what he's been exploring, he's got his works are totally proven eye-openers for non-scientists and scientists, metaphysicians and physicians. So whether you're the medical health professional or you're just the public looking for some insight and wisdom, he's got it. He's been doing this since the 1960s, so this is pretty exciting. And he's my guest today on Let's Get Real, chatting with Catherine, talking to us all the way from Hawaii, and which is so amazing. So it's just going to be an audio today, and I hope you will enjoy. Welcome back to Let's Get Real, chatting with Catherine, and I'm so delighted to be able to bring you this interview, this chat with Dr. William Tiller, all the way from Hawaii. And as many of you follow the show know, I'm in Alberta, so the technology is awesome, and today is turned out to be a really good day for connecting. So welcome to the show, Dr. Tiller. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you. You probably want to know that I grew up in Toronto, and so did my wife. And we left there in 1955.
Holy smokes. I didn't know there was a Canadian connection there, Dr. Tiller. That's great.
Yep, absolutely.
We have a
Jean's
lot of...
still a Canadian.
Yeah.
I had to change for technological reasons in the States.
Well, often happens with work, unfortunately. I want to start at,
I will let people know your full bio, and they can always go to the website lgrcc.com, where your bio is there and information on your books and everything. I mean, you've got over 150 papers and information for the scientist and the traditional people, and you've got information for the public, which is why I'm embracing this so much. But you're also going to be delivering the keynote speech to the International Kinesiology Conference in September 23rd to the 27th. It's in Banff, Alberta, Canada. And Dr. Tiller is going to be the keynote speaker, and I know it's going to be awesome. So super thrilled about all of that, Dr. Tiller, that we're going to be able to meet in person. But
a small correction.
Yes.
A small correction relative to the papers and such. The Orthodox Science, there are 3 books and 275 papers. On the Unorthodox Science, there are 4 books and about 160 papers now.
Where do you have time to eat or sleep?
Oh, well, it's a joy, you know. You can ask a painter how do they have time to sleep? But in fact, it's a joy to paint, and they can fill a house with them without trying.
Yeah, it's clearly your passion, is it not?
Yes, it is.
Yeah. I want to go to the big question for me is this new word. It's a new word for me. It's probably not for you because you've been doing this since the 1960s. But what is psychoenergetics? Can you tell us what that term is?
The name was really selected by the Soviets, the scientists, and I think they chose that name. That was the work that they wanted to do. But they chose that name so that their masters would think that they were doing something serious.
That's
I think that's where it came. That's where it came from, basically.
Right. Well, you were featured on the movie "What the Bleep Do We Know" many years ago. But that, I think, was a kind of a turning point. That and The Secret, 2 movies that really brought science and understandings more to the layperson than anything prior to that. I mean, other than the science fiction type movies, but this was kind of real life information. And since that time, have you noticed that increase in the public's awareness and desire for the information?
Yes, there is a great increase because for the same reason that I chose to not totally abandon Orthodox science, but to move towards something that gave humanity more hope.
Mm-hmm. Well,
and I think that's what it is, and that's why I chose to seriously work on it.
Yeah. It seems like the time, you know, that there's more lay people. I mean, I have this insatiable quest for knowledge and wisdom on all of these. Like, how does this world really work, and where are the places where we thought we had no power, and yet we actually are incredibly powerful? And your work seems to speak to that. Like, it's about empowering us with an understanding, but also the tools. So
I think so.
In your quest for this kind of information, what would you say was the most pivotal, shift that you discovered? I mean, in all this work, I'm sure there were many, but
the pivotal shift occurred very early, and it was when my wife Jean and I were left the Westinghouse Research Labs in Pennsylvania, where I had worked for 9 years, and headed to take the position as a full professor at Stanford University with tenure back in 1964. And basically, Jean said, as we were driving with our 2 kids in the back of the car, she said, "Bill, when we get to Stanford, let's try to pull together the spiritual side of our life." And I said, "Yes, that sounds like a good idea. Let's try to do that." And the way we stepped down that path was not the conventional way. It was to begin to meditate. and we began to meditate following the Edgar Cayce approach. We had read something of Edgar Cayce while we were still at Stanford, at California, at Westinghouse. It's been so long, I'm afraid I'm forgetting it. And of course, I am older.
Yeah, that's fine.
And basically, we read the book called The Miracle Man of Virginia Beach. And this was Edgar Cayce. He was probably the world's greatest psychic in the last century.
Yes.
I mean, he died in the early 50s, but he was a remarkable individual. He had his own study group in the 1930s, and he followed that path for 7 years, and then he wrote 2 little books on them, and one was called Search for God Book 1, the other was called Search for God Book 2. So that was Edgar Cayce in terms of his base of understanding. He was a very spiritual man, and he had this remarkable ability to go into deep meditation, and that would open his mediumistic channels, and he could gather information that was quite remarkable to the world. And it was that kind of information. It was the information of the parapsychological phenomena, was the information of the Russians working in this path, really reaching far beyond Orthodox science. Orthodox science kept pushing that information under the rug. They tried to deny it because it wasn't internally consistent with with Orthodox science.
Yeah, and his
the
work,
last centuries.
Dr. Edward Cayce's information is still resonating with people to date. People are still discovering it. I mean, they used to call him the sleeping psychic or
sleeping prophet.
Sleeping prophet.
Sleeping prophet.
And you know, I think a lot of people have figured out or learned since that time that people like Einstein and Mozart, they all use some kind of meditation or form to bring ideas from the higher consciousness or the divine or whatever, you know, but science sort of discounted.
I call it going within and becoming inner self-managed. It's like going to an inner gym. Just like you build your physical muscles by going to an outer gym, but this one is much higher, much more important.
Yeah, and this is where
we all can do it.
Well, that's the thing, is by bringing the information. I like the fact that you didn't give up, and that even though, you know, in your chosen field, maybe Orthodox science wasn't listening, but I mean, you kept going, and you're such a gift, and you've offered such a gift to humanity because. The people, this is what I feel is the sign of the times. The people have just realized there's no wall between us, and that we are capable of, you know, having this higher learning. Even if we didn't go to university or didn't study the sciences in school, we can have this information brought to us, and you do it in such a delicious way that it makes it easier for people to grasp, I think.
Well, thank you for that. I've known a lot of stupid PhDs, and I've known a number of people who didn't even finish grade school that are remarkable and performing better than most people can.
Yeah, I find it humorous when I think back to my grade 11 physics teacher. He was such a sweet man, and he came to me at the end of the semester and he said, you know, Catherine, I know you're trying, you're working really, really hard, and you just don't get it. And he was right, I didn't. But so he generously gave me an E for effort, because he really should have given me an F. But he said, I can see that you really want to get this, and I just didn't, because it wasn't presented in a way I could understand, and he didn't know how to present it in a way. And I just find it humorous that today I'm exploring quantum physics and things like that I'm not getting graded on, but I sure am enjoying.
Well, that's good. I mean, I think this is the point. We can do so much if we give ourselves a chance.
Yes. And
just try.
Yeah. And open your mind.
Keep trying. There's nothing wrong with failing.
No.
You just keep going down the road. It's all a great adventure, and don't give up.
Yeah. Well, and some of your books, one of your books is, which I think is really resonates with me. I haven't read it yet. I'm hoping to pick up several of these books at the International Kinesiology Conference. I'm hoping you'll have some of these available. One of them is the Science and Human Transformation, Subtle Energies, Intentionality, and Consciousness. Now that really resonates with me, that idea that intentionality, is that...
That's crucial.
Yeah.
Intentionality is an act of creation. And that's what we're about. I think our spiritual parents dressed us in these bio-body suits, and they put us in this playpen that we call a universe in order to grow in coherence, in order to develop our gifts of intentionality, in order to become what we were intended to become, which is co-creators with our spiritual parents.
Yeah.
And these are qualities that are natural to us. Let them grow, intend to do them, give them strength, give them love, all those things.
Mm-hmm. And your role in this is to sort of be that bridge, isn't it? To help us to have...
My original goal is to build a bridge of sound scientific standing that seamlessly joins with our conventional science, goes through the domains of the psyche, the domains of emotion, the domains of mind, and firmly implanted in the bedrock of spirit at the other end. That's what we are, I think.
Mm-hmm. Well, and that's
our path.
Yeah, and that's the beauty of all of this, is that you're bringing together all aspects of what it is to be in our human body on this planet Earth, but so much more. And before, there's been times in our human history where people did understand, they had a psychic gift, or they had a higher consciousness, or, they had, like Einstein, or, had a higher ability to tap in. But it seems like we have set about with Western medicine or science, Orthodox science.
I think that we need to realize that a huge change is in store for us, because first and foremost, we are all souls, mm-hmm. indestructible and eternal, and we need a bio-body suit to experience space-time. And in our case, our bio-body suits, which we put on when we were born and shuck off when we move back into the higher realms, there are two levels to them. One is the outer level, which is the electric atom molecule level, and all of that is subluminal. That is, the phenomena are slower than the velocity of light. And then within that, and connecting to the soul self, is the acupuncture meridian chakra system, which is superluminal. Superluminal means faster than the velocity of light, but it also means invisible to our eyesight and to today's technological optical measurement instruments.
Right.
And we're going to meet that within this century and the next one. And it's going to be a big shock for medicine and for science. So it's going to be a very interesting adventure.
Yeah, definitely. And do you see that by having this understanding that, what fields, health, wellness, or more?
All of those things. I'm going to talk about those at the conference. There are 4 main projects. I will preface it with I'll call it my working hypothesis of what we humans are, which I've just sort of said a little bit about it, and that I will expand on that. But then I'll go into 4 technical areas of activity and have Q&A after each one. And the first one really deals with what intention is about. And the first, subtle energy. Subtle energies I defined as all those energies manifested by nature beyond those created by the 4 fundamental forces of today's Orthodox science that manifested really in the last almost 500 years. So the second level experiment is to show that it is possible to change the properties of materials by using your intention, unequivocally. And so the statement, the assumption by Descartes back in the early 1600s was that no human qualities of consciousness, intention, emotion, mind, or spirit can significantly influence a well-designed target experiment in physical reality. Now that was useful in its day because that occurred about a century after the transition from our theocratic paradigm. And people had difficulty distinguishing between science and religion. And that's why he made that assumption. And it was useful in his day to say that because it was easier to distinguish between science and religion. But it still took another century before people really got that. And the dilemma, of course, in today's world is that Orthodox science and Orthodox medicine actually unconsciously believe that in today's world.
Yeah.
And my second aspect of work proves that that is totally wrong in today's world. And then the third segment, with Q&A after all of these, the third segment was we learned how to broadcast that anywhere in the world and be able to heal people, remove real problems for people. The first one was in 2003, where we were able to broadcast this about 1,500 miles and remove or greatly reduce depression and anxiety for humans. And then we learned how to broadcast it anywhere in the world to affect autistic children and their parents. And the p-values of the successful work in the first one, depression and anxiety, that was better than 1 part in 1,000. With the autistic children, that was better than 1 part in 10,000.
Oh my!
And then another of these broadcasts was to wean people away from self-judgment and a sense of loneliness and being isolated from others to self-compassion, compassion for themselves, compassion for others, etc. And even animals seem to respond. So it's very interesting. And the fourth segment deals with how do we increase consciousness in the world. And so we're doing experiments on that as well, to not only groups of people where we know where they are, but people that we don't know their names and we don't know where they are in the world. But we are able to use kinesiology as a tool to make measurements of these things. So it's an interesting adventure. It sort of rounds, there's a kind of closure in that, and people they're kind of thrilled that these things can happen.
Well, it's very empowering, and this is part of what you're going to be presenting in your keynote speech at the International Kinesiology Conference.
Exactly.
So that people will be able to have some Q&A with you as well on these kind of mind-blowing concepts.
It is, but it's just because it's new. People haven't thought about it.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it does seem, it's mind-blowing compared to Orthodox science and Orthodox medicine. But once you open the door to that as a conceptual possibility, then you can see many, many, many things that are possible for us as humankind.
Well, you know,
and it's a joy.
Yeah, truly it is. But you know, years ago there used to be, and there still is today, people would come together in prayer groups or sending, you know, healing.
Yep.
They didn't have to be in person. They would just pray for somebody. Is that very much except maybe expanded into beyond religion? Because sometimes that was sort of in the realm of religion, but this is a little bit more than that, or is it exactly the same?
It's beyond conventional religion. Religion you see as man's creation. Those kinds of things are the manifestation of humans to their own power and to sense the aspect of the universe that's beyond what's dealt with in our conventional science. Conventional science, I'm afraid, is quite stuck, and it's too bad. I mean, they're good people. They mean well, but they're stuck in some concepts and unwilling to risk. But
yes.
You know, I call these things my working hypotheses, and when I've proven them, then I say I've proven them. Then I have them forever, and everybody has them forever. But because it's a new area, it's better to say working hypothesis and get on with the job of trying to prove them right or wrong.
Yeah,
I mean, that's what scientists are supposed to do.
Well, that's what I was, you know, I've been saying different times, is that sometimes you have debates with people or discussions and they say, well, if the science hasn't proven it, then it's not true. And I think, well, that doesn't make sense. I always think of science as the science is just a tool to explore what already is. And just because they don't know about it doesn't mean it doesn't exist. And I think
it's important for us to realize there's much, much more unknown about our universe than is presently known. And that's a better base from which to operate.
Yeah. But do you think that, you know, when, you know, the Einsteins or the Graham Bell or whoever were, you know, working on different things, there was a lot of resistance because it was new and it was not understood at that time. Do you think that kind of resistance is healthy, or do you think that they've just kind of closed down too much, Orthodox science?
I don't think it's healthy. It is squelching, or tries to be squelching. I mean, in essence, the Orthodox, we knew a lot about these things in the middle of the 1800s. There was huge amount of work done in spiritual realms beyond religion. But it was because it wasn't understood. And it didn't behave the same way as Orthodox science did. Then Orthodox science said, it can't exist. It's got to be crap. And that's a
or witchcraft,
that's a position. It is a position of people who generally have a well-established position and don't want to be shaken by things they don't understand.
Well,
it's a very human thing. I mean, you know,
to protect
as humans, it's part of our growth to outgrow that stuff.
Well,
but it's just that.
And protecting their investment, so that, you know, and that's always been that way to a certain degree, but it seems like there's a lot more control over some of those things than is healthy for us as a society to evolve and expand and move into a higher way of being. But do you also there's a lot of people in the you know, more open-minded communities that believe we've raised the vibration on the planet, like the planet itself is at a higher vibration. Do you think that some of that, if you agree with that, is contributing to our
our desire to know, to have, you're not in a closet, you're out there in the public, we are hearing this stuff.
Yeah, the answer is yes. I think we are all capable of being avatar-type conscious. It takes a lot of work. It usually takes a lot of lifetimes. But that's our capability as humans. We'll use a new name in a couple of centuries when we're dealing with faster-than-light phenomena, and we are becoming more and more. It is interesting to see. I don't know if you've had experience with the Buddha relics. Here you are 3,000 years after many of these relics were formed, and yet you can still communicate with them and have a response, an experimental response.
Really?
One of my papers deals with that, yes. And it is, I think, that the more people work within, when you look at Buddhic masters, they grow in consciousness, but it seems as if they generate within their bone structure and within their cells characteristics that are beyond any conventional thought of Orthodox medicine. And when they cremate themselves after physical death, and people gather from the ashes little things called ring cells. Those ring cells you can feel them if you've developed a bit of sensitivity. And in fact, as I said, I did an experiment where I wanted to see if I could measure quantitatively data relative to them. And I had 3 different measurement instruments, and I didn't really make any requests as to what I wanted, and I thought I would see a change in a measurement instrument that I'd been working with. And it didn't change much, a little bit perhaps, over about a month and a half. And then my wife said, "Bill, you've never asked what it is you want." And I said, "Yes, that's right." So I basically leaned down to these Buddha relics, and I said, "Please, we've worked out that we think your gauge symmetry state level is far beyond the capability of our measurement instruments. Would you please sort of modulate it so that your effects will be able to be monitored by our measurement instruments? Thank you." And within the next 3 weeks, the measurement instrument zipped up, almost not quite vertically, but very high slope, and it's actually a pH measurement instrument, but it went up 3 pH units, which each one of them is 23 millielectron volts. So, I mean, that's a huge signature from such a thing. And anyone who asks of whether there is consciousness after what we call physical death, that data proves the point without a doubt. So it's interesting. It's all a great adventure, and it's very interesting. Yeah.
Do you think I have not read all of your papers. There's just so much, and I'm just beginning to really.
There is so much.
Yeah, but as you're talking about these relics, what's coming to me is this. I'm sure you're familiar with the crystal skulls that have been said to been around forever. And
I've heard of them. I've seen one. I haven't done any experiments with them, and I don't think we know enough to ask the right questions.
Okay.
Well, the other part then what's been my thought for some time is, especially as we are shifting on the planet away from dependency on oil and carbon and so forth, and we're moving into more natural ways of energy. I always think about the crystals, especially when I discovered those crystal caves that have been found with just gigantic crystals, and I wonder if there's the consciousness is one thing, but also for our future, do you see us tapping into that as an energy source, or?
Absolutely. Let me just give you an example. It was in the second book, Conscious Acts of Creation, and replicated in the last book, Psychoenergetic Science, in chapter 6, both cases. We find that when we lift the gauge symmetry state of the space, and I won't go into what that means over conversationally, every property starts to oscillate, and the oscillations aren't like on our normal world. They're usually 1 hertz and above,
yes,
up to millions of hertz,
right,
etc. These are all 1 hertz and below. That is a 10th hertz, a 100th, a 1,000th, 10,000th, a million, etc. We see these kinds of oscillations, which means the period is long. So we found that if we, in a room where we had these oscillations, and the whole room seemed to be oscillating, we put a quartz crystal with the C-axis vertically upright, and what that did was to increase the amplitude of these oscillations. And then we rotated them that quartz crystal 90 degrees, and suddenly everything inversed in these oscillations.
Wow.
Just frequencies changed, the general macro pattern changed. So I knew then that crystals are very, very important, and it's interesting, my conventional science, what I did was I was a world-class expert in the science of crystallization, how crystals are formed. Yeah. And I knew that I will be getting back to it somewhere in the next decade of my life.
Mm-hmm.
But
fascinating.
And the time is actually coming up about now, actually.
Yeah.
So I start to see some signs.
Yeah,
so it's going to be interesting.
It is incredible. It's a fascinating time to be on the planet. And
I think so.
Yeah. And it, to me, it's like, let's all open our minds. I mean, not everybody wants to. That's very clear by now.
Yeah.
But
I think it's important. It's important to give things meaning.
Mm-hmm.
That's the key issue here. For example, if we look at the conscious mind and the unconscious mind, the conscious mind has an information handling capacity of less than 50 bits per second, and maybe less than 12. But the unconscious mind, its information handling capacity is more than 50 million bits per second.
wow.
So we're mostly unconscious beings, and so that's doing all the work and gathering information and putting together little kernels of information which it feeds to the conscious mind, but only along those channels that the conscious mind has given meaning to. If you don't give meaning to it, it just dumps the information.
Yeah.
Because you're not open.
Yeah, exactly. And that's sometimes the problem is we have no context, and so we can't make meaning. We have a hard time making meaning from some of the things that are coming towards us, and that kind of blocks us from the full understanding.
It is difficult, but the issue is to try to be open and be receptive and to at least give it meaning.
Mm-hmm.
That means that you're paying attention. Your unconscious will feed you tremendous amounts of information if you show it that you're paying attention.
Ah. And is that in some of your books that, do you give some kind of teachings that people can learn to try to tap into?
Yeah, I think that one. I think that one is in Psychoenergetic Science in the early part of it. But certainly in my books and on my website, tiller.org, I have sort of, not completely, but largely given up on normal scientific publishing systems because it's difficult for them to believe what I've achieved in this experimental work. And so I have written about 39 free white papers so far, and they're free. Anybody can access them. They can print out copies. They can send them to others, etc. And I try to bring these new things to light. Now, I'll probably write another book before I pass from this domain, but to try to help Orthodox science expand their consciousness to deal with what I call a duplex level of reality. That's in essence what I've concluded is the what we're going to have to move to. It's beyond distance time. I mean, you know, if you look at quantum mechanics and you say you've been playing with it, one of the things that's talked about a lot is the wave-particle duality. Mm-hmm. Well, the issue is that if you have a system in which you can have simultaneously waves and particles, you can calculate everything that quantum mechanics calculates. Now, our Orthodox scientific fathers, who are the quantum mechanical fathers, didn't try to expand the space, the concept of the space. And so they had to assume that waves could change to particles and particles could change to waves. But in fact, if you have a duplex space, and in my case it's a reciprocal subspace, that is a reciprocal of distance and time, which becomes a frequency domain, then you don't have to have particles becoming waves and waves becoming particles. One of them is subluminal and the other one is superluminal. And it's a whole new world. There's a whole new quantum mechanics ultimately.
Yeah.
And a whole new technology. There are all kinds of new technologies possible.
But even where you're, as you say, the Orthodox science is kind of stuck, but there's a lot of people in previously traditional medicines and science that, or it feels like, are starting to open to this. Is it just that it's not enough, or do you think we're waiting for that 100th monkey thing where people are going to finally open their eyes,
No, I think consciousness is growing. I'm very, very pleased at that. And we see it in our experiments. We can enhance that growth rate. So I'm very optimistic. I mean, I gave up being department chair in order to have the time to do this other work at Stanford University. So you have to have a bit of faith. But again, it's a working hypothesis, and it'll take time to work it out. But if you give it meaning, then you have a higher probability of working it out.
Right. Right. So what? So you're going to be doing the keynote speech at the conference. You're going to have books available there as well. And
yes.
What are you doing? Do you do workshops anywhere else, or is it mostly through your work? I mean, you are a busy man for sure. But for people that want to access the information, primarily is it your website?
The website, I think, is a good place to go because the new material that's there, these 39 free white papers, they're beyond the books. And I'm just trying to work out what I think is needed for future science to grab a hold of and begin to understand how it fits into science. Mm-hmm.
Well, you have something for everyone. You have the people from the Orthodox science. You have papers for them. You have papers, books for people who are just curious. And I mean, a lot of people today are starting to say, is that all there is? Isn't there more to life? We want to thrive.
There is more than we could imagine. Certainly much more than what I have had to say. There will be lots more as we go down the centuries ahead.
Well, I just am curious whether, I know you're going to, as you say, probably write another book before you leave planet Earth, but do you have anyone mentoring under you that's going to carry on your work, or several others, or how do you see that for the future?
No, with that one, I haven't found exactly those that I think can do or should be able to do. I think everybody can do what I can do, but it may take a few lifetimes. I mean, I don't mean it in any kind of a bragging way, but it is. I've been able to do things in this lifetime because I probably had earlier lifetimes that built the foundation.
Exactly.
And I'm, I'm just like. I'm really like other people, the same, and it's been my adventure, and I'm trying to make it work.
No, and you're making a huge contribution. But do you think that, so once you move into different consciousness, and maybe even now while you've been on the planet, do you think it's possible that we, as we are raising our vibration and raising the consciousness, that we can get some faster evolution and faster, and more coherent answers to some of our questions? But like, I could tap into you once you've crossed over and carry on your work, or someone else, not necessarily me.
It's possible. I mean, I think it's something I give meaning to. I mean, I have been aided by, I think, unseen colleagues from higher dimensional realms of the universe.
Sure.
I mean, I think they've given me things to think about and have helped me in some ways. Not that I've ever seen them,
no,
but I certainly feel them when I'm lecturing. So, but again, it's a working hypothesis stage for me.
Well, it's a wonderful way to be spending time, that's for sure. And I can't think of anything more exciting than to be on this leading edge of shift and change.
Yeah. Well, you'll be interested in knowing that this particular talk that I'm giving to what I'll call are mainly scientists in kinesiology, I'm doing it in October in Dallas, giving it to basically a spiritual group of people, more religious, basically, group of people. And I'm doing it again in the early November. I'm doing it to medical people.
Oh, my.
So it's the same story, but the emphasis can be in either of these realms. It's all part of one. Well,
that's fantastic, because as you're reaching all the different people in their different areas, and they're reaching the people in their areas, I mean, it has that ripple effect, which is...
I'm really excited about this adventure, and this part of it, I think, is going to be a lot of fun.
Well, I definitely think it will be too. Is there anything that you really feel you just really want to share before we end this chat today with the people that are listening?
Well, the main thing the issue is give things meaning. Radiate what you are. Be yourself. Just let it be. Radiate whatever what you think is the best of yourself to the world. And I would advise everybody to try to learn how to meditate and to go deeper within. There is so much there.
Yeah.
So much. More than they can imagine.
Well, I'm a big fan of meditation. It's been a huge shift in my life, for sure. And I encourage everyone to go to Dr. Tiller's website and get all the information that you can. Really, this is where, to me, there's no wall anymore. We can walk right in and access this wonderful information and be really gifted by the work that Dr. Tiller's done for all these years. So I am
I'm thrilled. I'm glad to be on this planet at this time and to be able to share this information with everyone. This is just phenomenal. So thank you so much, Dr. Tiller.
Thank you, Catherine. I'm very happy to share as well.
Yeah, and I just wanted to add one thing. This talk that you're giving at the International Kinesiology Conference 2015 in Banff in September is open for the public, is it not?
Everybody.
Yeah.
Everybody, yes.
Yeah, as well as practitioners and Orthodox scientists in the works. So,
right.
Wow, what a great coming together of. I can just see the molecules dancing in Banff, because it's already high vibration.
Sounds good to me.
Yeah, it does.
And we can have a lot of fun.
You bet. And I look forward to meeting you in person and hopefully having a chance to have a short chat at least in the flesh, so that people can meet you that way too.
I will look forward to that, Catherine.
All right, wonderful. Well, you have a wonderful evening, and everyone that's listening, don't forget to subscribe and to the YouTube channel and share, so that we can really change the world. That's how I feel. And until next time.
Exactly.
Yeah, take care. That's
okay. Love to all.
Thank you so much.
Wasn't that amazing? Thank you to my guests for sharing with us today. Thank you for watching. Feel free to share the link. You can join us for live shows by going to letsgetrealchattingwithcatherine.com and listen to the replays from the show page, preview guests, and explore links to our Facebook fan page, WordPress blog, and more. We are creating an exquisite world. Until next time, take care.